How you doing? Glad to have you with us once again today. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We've got a lot going on today. We're going to start with some spring football talk, and we've got spring practice coming up next week, and then coming up in a few minutes, our old friend Tom Noie from the South Bend Tribune is going to join us to get us caught up on everything going on with Notre Dame basketball. Men's basketball. How are you tonight, Jess?
I'm doing well. I think I've caught up from losing that hour of sleep over the weekend.
I don't know. I've been just feeling, felt cruddy anyway, the other day, and just kind of I think I'm still trying to catch up coming out of daylight saving time.
Yeah, I went to bed decently early last night and the night before, so I've just let nature take its course. March is a busy month. I've been
It
kind of running
is.
around, and there's going to be more running around. So I
It
need to have
is.
all the rest I can, especially before this weekend, because this weekend is, as we know, Friday is St. Patrick's Day, and then my birthday is Sunday, but I'm going out with friends on Saturday night. So Friday and Saturday are going to be very busy days for me.
All right. Well, hit the like button if you would as you come through the door tonight for the live show. And again, good to have you with us. Let's jump into some football talk before we bring Tom Noy on here in a few minutes. He's going to pop in a few. But I was thinking, so we've got, again, a week from Wednesday, basically a week from tomorrow, we've got spring football starting. And Vince and I touched on some spring priorities and stuff like that on yesterday's show. How about offensive breakout players? Like guys we anticipate could have a big spring and really break out. What I thought we would do is we can draft a couple of different teams of breakout candidates going into the spring, and then at the end we can see whose little team of breakout possibilities turned out better. Maybe we can put something on the line for it as well. What do you say?
I'm always down for wagers. I think you know that. So, especially a friendly wager.
Yeah, that's right. Any, like when you look at the quarterbacks, I mean, basically, if you're a returning starter, you're not eligible to be a breakout player, right? Like if
Right.
we're going to put some parameters on this, any other parameters you can think of? Like, really, I think Kenny Minchie is probably like. Do you put Steve Angeli still on the list?
I do
Because
put Steven Kelly still on the list because I don't
okay,
think he's all the way broken out yet, and I don't think
yeah,
he's actually got. To me, you got to have like suitable amount of playing time. Like you have to have stats sheets. You have to be, lose a year of eligibility type of guy in order. If you still in the prior season, if you weren't eligible, meaning you didn't play enough games, or simply you were redshirted, I don't believe that you could be considered a breakout player.
okay, all right. I can agree with that. My only rationale for not including Angeli is essentially because at the end of the blue gold game last year, he essentially became a spring breakout player last year, but he obviously did, that didn't turn into any actual playing time. So I can see where he could still be, considered a breakout candidate. Well, I tell you what, I'll give you the first draft pick. Who are you gonna draft on your offensive breakout player candidate draft? Who's the number one
Hmm.
pick?
Am I eligible to go from any position right now?
Any position group you want, throw it out there. Any player you want from the offensive side of the ball. This is your top breakout player of the spring.
Oh man. You know what? I'm gonna shock a lot of people here. I'm gonna go with Rocco Spindler as my first overall pick.
Ooh, very interesting. Going with Rocco Spindler. Okay, I like that. Explain why you put him so high.
I think that there are a lot of available positions on the offensive line. I think that he has been here long enough that he hasn't necessarily gotten that playing time. And
Right?
coming out of high school, he was a bigger recruit. It was a big deal when Notre Dame landed him. He came out of Michigan and he decided to go to go to Notre Dame over some of those Michigan schools that were, highly recruiting him at the time. So I'm gonna go with I just think that he has a lot of untapped potential. I think he has the skill set to do, to have a breakout year. And I think that he's got the experience of learning behind, some good players ahead of him. And I think that this is finally kind of his time on the offensive line unit.
I like that. I mean, I think that those two guard spots are, I mean, that's what a lot of us in the one practice that we have, I guess, but I mean, that's what we want to see. What's going to happen at those guard spots? Who's going to emerge? You've got three primary candidates for two spots there, left guard and right guard. And I think Spindler is a good choice. He kind of became a hot commodity 2 springs ago as a freshman when some of the numbers were depleted and stuff like that, but it hasn't turned into playing time over the last couple of years. Tommy was asking, has Angeli even somewhat broken out yet? And like I said, I was counting last spring. He was kind of a spring breakout player last year. He obviously, in terms of breaking out on the field, actual games and that kind of stuff, he has not broken out. But if I guess if you break out in the spring and then you don't turn into a at least a rotational player in the actual season, you're still qualified the following spring, right? So that's why we put Angeli in there again. All right, well, you're going Rocco Spindler. I'm just going to go with the easy pick. I'm going with Tobias Merriweather. Um,
Okay.
because maybe there's a minor argument that Tobias has broken out. I think it has to be a very minor argument when you have one reception.
I was gonna
So
say he only had one catch.
that's right. Yes, and I absolutely do, Stymie, think that he qualifies to be a breakout, because I don't think you can be a breakout player in the season when all you've got is one catch. That is one catch. It was a huge play, but ultimately, it didn't amount to anything over the course of the season. Now, he would have played more at the end of the season if not for the head injury and stuff like that. But this is a wide receiver core that obviously is in need of an alpha dog, and Tobias has everything that you want, in terms of physical traits to be an alpha dog. So I'm looking at Tobias as my top pick for my offensive breakout player.
So you took off some of these wide receivers. See, I was gonna go wide receiver first, but again, I went. I think I
You
went with
had the
more of a
number one
boom.
pick.
I
Yeah,
think
you
I
had
went
the
with
number
more
one
of a
pick.
boom or bust type pick. I'm either going to greatly succeed or drastically fail. So
All
that's
right.
okay with me.
That's all right. That's all right. So who's your next pick?
Let me see here. I gotta go. I gotta look at the wide receiver category now because I can't let another one go. And I'm just trying to make sure that I look at someone's numbers first before I
Do
can,
we do we count
classify
Dion
them.
Colsey? Is Dion Colsey eligible? I mean, again, he turned into a rotational player, but I don't think he's truly broken out in terms of an everyday type, standout. What do you
No,
think?
and he's he only averaged probably like 17 yards per game and one not
Right.
even a reception per game, and that's actually who I was looking up on the moment because I like his height, I like his frame, and I like he didn't have many catches last year, but the ones that he did have, I liked that he's got good hands, he's got a good catch radius, he's got a good physical body, and I don't think that you're not going to get away with throwing it to Tobias all the time, and I think Tobias plays a different kind of wide receiver
Right.
than what Dion Colsey does. So I am actually going to take Dion Colsey with my number 2 selection.
Okay, that's a good selection, Mr. Dion Colsey. And I'm not as he had like the big third down, possession type receptions and stuff that year. Really for him, like from what middle of the season on, he at least again became like a more an actual part of the rotation. A big thing for him is just getting completely healthy and doing all that stuff. We saw some good stuff for him or from him, but I think that there is still a lot ahead of Dion Colsey. So I think that is a very solid pick as well. Now I'm trying to decide, do I go to the offensive line where you have gone, or do I go skill possession guy or skill position guy? Like do I go for the glitz? Do I go for the glamour? And I think that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go I'm going to go to a guy who again had a big spring last year, but as soon as the spring was over, things took a quick downhill turn for him. And of course, I'm talking about the running back, Jadarian Price. And I mean,
Dang, that was my next one.
you had the chance. You had the chance. So I'm going with Jadarian Price. Again, huge spring last year. We saw him take that screen pass for a touchdown in the blue gold game, but then unfortunately afterwards, we found out, that he was injured and all that stuff, and he was never able to play this past season. And really, he was an early enrollee last year. And when you look at the spring he had, I think a lot of people were thinking this is going to be the star of the room. And look how good that room ended up being, even without Jadarian Price last year. So that's why, like, you look at this year, and it's even more, exciting to look at the makeup of that running back room and everything that comes with it. So I'm going with JD Price, Jadarian Price, as my number 2 guy on my draft.
Okay. Okay.
Now I
Let
put you
me.
in the hole. I put you in the hole a little bit. You got to figure out what you're going to do.
You know what? I am actually going to. Hmm. See, I wanted to take a look at defense, but I know that is for a later date. You know what? I'm actually going to go with another wide receiver, actually, and I'm going to go with Jaden Greathouse.
Okay. I like that. I mean, he's talking about how, he can be a touchdown maker for Notre Dame, and great skill set. So I like you stacking up on receivers there to try to catch up now.
Well, it's only gonna pull me ahead, and the reason I like Jaden Greathouse is one, he obviously didn't see much at all playing time last year, and I think with the addition of someone like Hartman, this passing attack is going to be the ball's not just going to go to one person. I think it's going to be a nice mix of Tobias, Dion, great. The risk between for me is Jaden and Rico because I think it's going to be one of the two, and I think I have more confidence in Jaden Greathouse than I do
Okay.
Rico Flores. So I'm going to go with Jaden Greathouse. And again, just because I think that ball is going to get distributed amongst the wide receivers more evenly this season, it's not going to be, the Michael Mayer show in terms of who's catching the ball on offense. So yeah, I really like Jaden Greathouse.
All right. I like that. Good pick. Especially, it's what are we going to see from these freshmen? I think that is it's a big question. The freshman receivers. It's always been a big question mark, and when you go into a spring, it's an even bigger question mark. And how much does it mean coming out of the spring if they do have a good season? Veteran quarterback and the whole thing. So I like that. I like that. I'm going to go back. You've already taken an offensive lineman. I'm going to take one as well. I realize, like we've seen some Shrouth nominations. I'm going to go with the veteran of the crew and go with Andrew Kristofic as my offensive line pick. Again, you took Rocco Spindler with your first pick, which was a really bold pick, the number 1 overall pick in this draft. But Kristofic's a guy with some experience. He's got size. I would expect that he is going to, again, this is just my expectation. I would expect that he's going to win one of those 2 guard spots. We've seen good things from him when he's been in there. It's really been about opportunity, and now there is a lot more opportunity with both of these guard spots open. So Kristofic is the guy that I'm going with.
Okay, I'm going to. I'm going to go with a combination here. A guy who can catch the ball.
Hold on. We've got Vince chiming in. Andrew was a starter. He was a part-time starter. That didn't last. So I don't think he is truly broken out. He is still looking to make a name for himself, Dario. Come on, give me a break.
I like how Vince is chiming in from the chat.
I know.
Must not be working hard enough today.
That's right.
I'm gonna go. My next pick is gonna be a guy who can catch the ball, and who can also is gonna provide some blocking. And so I'm gonna stick with the tight end position here, and I'm gonna go with Eli Raridan as my breakout tight end. And I don't think you can go wrong here because I think Notre Dame utilizes more than one tight end. I don't think we're gonna see that leave anytime soon. But I think someone like Eli Raridan is gonna have a breakout season for what I talked about. I think he's going to be a guy who can catch the ball, but I also think he can be a pretty average inline blocker. So that's who I'm going to go with. Obviously, the tight end position, like I said, it's going to be one or two guys, maybe even three. And so I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer, but I think of the group, Eli Raridan has the most potential to be, the breakout guy. So that's who I'm going to go
Absolutely.
with.
Absolutely. My only question is he healthy? Obviously, he had the injury in the season. So what's going to happen with like it? And that's probably something that we'll find out a week from tomorrow when Marcus Freeman has his opening spring press conference. Who's going, who's not going, all that different kind of stuff. And I agree with We Are Not Marshall. I mean, Vince is close to getting blocked. Not just a timeout. There might be a block coming up here sometime soon. Yeah, I want a super sticker. That's what it is. All right. So Jesse has Eli Raridan with his number 4 pick. And I am tempted, again, it's like, to what degree? Like, do we consider Mitchell Evans broken out just because he's played a little bit? Or, like, have any of the tight ends truly broken out right now? Like, how do we evaluate that considering Michael Mayer got all the action basically for the last 3 years?
Yeah, that's you start looking at his career stats. He's got 5 receptions for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. So I don't consider that all the way broken out quite yet.
Okay. I'm on the fence a little bit. You took Jaden Greathouse. I'm gonna go with Braylon James. I think this is a guy. He comes in, again, a great skill set, highly touted, and all that. It's like good high school body, good hands, good speed, the whole thing. So I'm gonna go with one of the other freshman wide receivers, Braylon James, with my number 4 pick in
I
this
think this is
breakout
the
player
guy
draft.
that T Guns was referring to. He said, "I can't think of who the other wide receiver is from Texas. I'm spacing on his name. A guy that's a little bit faster. I
It
believe that
is.
this is the guy that he was trying to come up with." So T
Yeah,
Guns, I'm here for you because I couldn't think of it either.
James and Greathouse are the 2 receivers who are in there. All right, do you want to make one more pick, or do you want to kind of keep it where it is right now?
Can you have Tobias Merriweather, Andrew K, and then who was the running back again?
Yeah, I've got Tobias Merriweather, Jadarian Price,
Jadarian.
Andrew Christophic, Braylon James. You've got Rocco Spindler, Dion Colsey, Jaden Greathouse, Eli Raridan.
I think we should go one more each to give us a nice 5 number.
You're just trying to catch up.
My team's already won at this point.
Oh man. All right. One more then. One more then.
um, hmm. See, I think the wide receivers are pretty much taken care of. I believe that the running backs, I mean, that's already taken care of. You already have 3 guys plus,
Yeah, really
Jadarian Price.
I was going to say, like, Jabron Payne is the only other running back who would qualify at this point.
Yeah, and I think with 4 running backs already, the room is already kind of full. Minchie and Angeli, I don't think they're, those guys are going to be, I think, pretty buried behind Hartman and Bugner. So I'm actually going to go with, I'm going to butcher the last name. You already said it, but I'm going to go with Billy Schrouth.
There you go. You said it right.
My
Well
last
done.
pick. And the only reason I'm doing this is for insurance, for just in case Spindler doesn't pan out.
Okay.
But I do think that he is going to be someone that's going to. He is very talented. He's very young. He possesses all of the talents of what it means to be successful in the offensive line. at Notre Dame. I just think the inexperience and obviously being young and having a lot of experience ahead of him is kind of what has held him back. But I like the combination of him and Rocco potentially as, the two starting guards out there come the first game of the season.
All right. I'm going to go Mitchell Evans then as my final pick. As you've got Eli Raridan, I'll go with Mitchell Evans because, again, I know Evans has played a little bit, but I don't think he's truly broken out so far. When like I said, Michael Mayer has just stolen every reception the tight ends could have.
I mean, if you weren't a tight end named Michael Mayer at Notre Dame, you were pretty screwed. Let's be honest.
Right. That's right. All right. So those are our top options for Notre Dame's spring offensive player of the year. Sitting on deck right now, or coming off the bench right now, since I guess we're talking about basketball, is the one, the only Thomas Noie from the South Bend Tribune. How are you today, Tom?
What's up, gents? I get both Steyers today.
That's right.
Lucky day for you.
Steyers in stereo. Let's go.
Steyers squared.
And Vince, I think, is lurking in the chat somewhere. So you may actually hear from him. He was just giving me a hard time a minute ago. So
trouble. We're holding a spring football draft. It must be spring football time.
That's right, baby. That's right. What do you think? You've been over there. You've been at some of these media availabilities so far. Have like any of the, whether it's Parker or Rudolph or Gaduli, like any of these guys, anything really stand out to you? What you've seen or heard from them so far?
No, because the only thing that matters is what happens. The only thing that matters with them, I mean, they're very well spoken. They talk the talk. Now you have to go walk the walk if you're Joe Rudolph as the offensive line coach, and if you're Gino Gaduli as the quarterbacks coach, because what we really need to see from them, it's not necessarily what we need to hear from them in our media sessions, is what we see from them on the practice field when this whole thing gets started in 7 days.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, Tom. Like, you can sit here and talk about all the stuff that they say and everything that they outline and, all the plans that they have. But unfortunately, we won't be able to tell until we see, those things in action. And even more so, to take it a little bit further, is, spring practice, they don't really show a lot either. So we're really not going to see anything into that first kind of, chunk of games at the beginning of next season, which sucks as a fan because of the lack of just the unknown or not knowing what's gonna come.
I think that the biggest misnomer that fans believe in when spring practice starts is we're going to get answers. We're going to get answers as to who's going to be the starting left guard, who's going to be the starting right guard. What about the defensive secondary? Who's going to break out at wide receivers? Spring practice, for people who don't realize it, is basically just us going over to Planet Fitness and watching people work out for an hour and a half. That's right. Spring practice. Like, spring practice for them is don't get hurt. Let's work on some communication stuff. Let's get the kinks out from the last time we've been on a football field, which hasn't been since late December. And let's just start getting ready for the season. Like, there are no answers being formulated in March and April over at Notre Dame, other than the fact that maybe Sam Hartman's your starting quarterback.
Right. Yeah. It's just basic install. You're allowing the young guys to learn the system, learn the basics of your playbook, and really get them more snaps than anyone else, because what the juniors and seniors can do. It's about seeing what the younger guys can do and potentially what they've learned from the last season.
It's just more questions. That's all you get out of the spring. More questions. Exactly. Especially when you look at that spring, schedule and you go, oh, one full practice. And then, in the meantime, we get out of bed early to go see nothing,
Again, that's something that fans don't realize. When we see spring practice, we see nothing in those 5 periods of any substance, any consequence, anything that's going to shape in any way, shape, or form this football team in 2023. And we do get to see one full practice and the blue gold game, which is really nothing for us. So it's just like that's spring practice for you.
Everyone's going to overreact to the blue gold game, just like Steve Angeli last year. And then, that's what we're going to have all summer. I can't wait till Steve Angeli's playing. Why isn't Steve Angeli? Whatever it happens to be. There's always going to be something that's going to be overreacted to.
That's college football for you.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what. How about college basketball? That's why we brought you here tonight.
Do I really need to talk college basketball?
Man, I mean, you've probably had your fill since it's Notre Dame basketball that you predominantly get to talk about. But you had a good article up today at IndyInsider.com with a lot of update on the coaching search and all that kind of stuff. Tom, I've been saying for a while now, since this whole thing began, that I would be shocked if Notre Dame goes after a big name coach. I know Chris Holtman's name is keeps kind of bebopping in there, but we can address that in a minute. I mean, do you think what's the profile that you think that Notre Dame is ultimately going after in this search?
For lack of a better term, Mike Brey 2.0, in the fact that when Mike Brey arrived, he was a mid-major coach. He had the Duke pedigree. He had the DeMatha background, but he was a mid-major coach who was going to come in here and just work his backside off and be like, I don't care that this arena is a dump. I don't care that we practice in the pit. I don't care that we don't have a practice facility. I don't care that we haven't been to the NCAA tournament in 10 years. I want to work and get this program somewhere where I believe it can go. First in the Big East, then in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And all that outside stuff, I don't want to listen to it. I'll ask for this, and I'll ask for that, and I'll ask for this. And maybe the administration will give me only a part of this, but I'm not going to let it affect my job. And I think that's somebody that I think Notre Dame is going to target, where if you get a big name, you're going to want you're going to, first of all, if you get a big name, say for just discussion purposes, it's not going to happen. It will never happen. But say you go and hire Rick Pitino, and Rick Pitino comes in here. That tells you, and that tells everybody around this place, that you're 900% serious about Notre Dame men's basketball being a consistent winner, going to Final Fours, and challenging for national championships on par with Notre Dame football. And that's never going to happen, which is one of the reasons. Set aside all the off the court stuff with Rick Pitino. That's one of the reasons why a Rick Pitino, a John Calipari, a name your coach, a Mick Cronin, a Shaka Smart, a Mark Few will never look seriously at the Notre Dame job and say, I'm going to win there, because you're always going to take a backseat to what happens across the street from the Joyce Center.
I'm glad that you went ahead and threw Shaka Smart in there, because we did have a question from one of our listeners, Doug, about, he said, the Marquette coach, Shaka Smart. I mean, and Shaka's already experienced what it's like to be at a football school with that whole Texas experience. Did not go well. And just look at what he's done already at Marquette. It seems like he's back where he should be, at basically a basketball school.
Well, and you look at just from a big picture standpoint, you never say never about any coach, because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes unless you're behind those scenes. Is Shaka Smart going to leave Marquette? I don't think so, but you never know what might happen, what he's thinking. But you look at Shaka Smart right now, he's the only game in town. That's not going to happen in South Bend. He plays in a better league. The ACC isn't as good as the Big East right now. He's got himself a niche. He's got himself challenging to maybe go to a Final Four and challenge for a national championship in his second year. You're not going to do that at Notre Dame. And then one of the other overriding factors is he plays in a professional arena that's filled with 15,000, 17,000 people, and it's a state-of-the-art facility. That's not going to happen at Notre Dame. So I just can't see a guy like Shaka Smart looking at both jobs and saying, I'm a Wisconsin native. I've got this thing rolling. I'm this close to putting my stamp on this program and maybe doing what only Al McGuire's been able to do in Milwaukee with that program. Why would you want to go to Notre Dame, where you're facing at least 3, 4, 5 years rebuild to where this program and this team can be respectable again?
Tom, how much do you think that this NCAA tournament can have an effect on the Notre Dame kind of coaching carousel? Because I know that the tournament provides a lot of avenues to network, connect. There's a lot of coaches that come, even if their teams aren't there. Do you see Notre Dame kind of, networking out during the tournament, or is that not really, something that's up Notre Dame's avenue or style, I guess?
If the timetable with Mike Brey was different and he did not announce on January 20th, or some media outlet broke the story on January 19th, I won't say who, but if he did not announce on January 20th that he was leaving, okay, maybe the timetable will be a little different. But they've now had, this is day 54 that Notre Dame has had to vet and do its due diligence. I think whoever is the next coach at Notre Dame, I think that decision is already done. And they're just waiting for them to lose in the NCAA tournament or see how far they go in the NCAA tournament. But I'd have a really hard time thinking they sat around and didn't really advance what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it until they got to the NCAA tournament and said, okay, well, maybe we'll look at this school and that we'll look at coach A, B, C, and D. I think they've already looked at coach A, B, and C, A, B, C, and D. And once those teams lose, then this process will be accelerated. And if it isn't, like if we're sitting here in 2 weeks, maybe if we're sitting here in 10 days and there's still no coach, then that's just not going to be a good look for a team or for a program and a university and an administration that has had 8 weeks now to really line up where they want to go with this hire.
Again, reading your article, it looks like the folks at Notre Dame have been very tight-lipped, hard to get good information out of this whole thing. But you talked about going the mid-major route, Mike Brey 2.0, and that's kind of what I felt. And, there've been plenty of people, I think, thinking that, that means it's going to be Martin Inglesby. But again, based on your article, that doesn't look like that's the case. Are Drake's Darren DeVries and Matt Langle from Colgate, like from everything you've been able to put together, do you feel like those are the top two leading guys right now?
Yeah. And again, we're sitting here on March 14th. I've been working on this basically since January 19th and maybe to an extent a little earlier than that, because we kind of knew, I kind of knew where this whole thing was headed. So you start advancing as to who the next guy is going to be, looking at lists, looking at backgrounds, looking at coaching trees, looking at experience, looking at everything. And it just seems to keep pointing back in the same direction of Michael Shrewsbury at Penn State, Matt Langle at Colgate, Darren DeVries at Drake. Then you have some of those outside, what about this guy? What about Bobby Hurley? What about Greg McDermott? And you just kind of have to sift through everything and say, these three names, Shrewsbury, DeVries, and Langle, are the three names that just keep coming up when you talk to industry sources and you talk to former coaches and you talk to current college coaches and you talk to assistant, like you talk to everybody and just try to get as good of a handle on it as you can, because there's so many moving parts and there's so many agendas. Like you'll talk to agents and you'll talk to guys that know agents that are pushing their guys that have no chance of going to Notre Dame, but might have a chance to get a nice 5, 6, 7, 8 year extension at their school.
Just get them a raise. Yeah.
There's ulterior motives going on and everything. So coaching searches, I haven't done one since 2000. And I forget how time consuming and just overwhelmingly just like I'm thinking about the coach 25 hours a day. I go to bed thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it. I'm eating lunch. I'm thinking about it. I'm talking to you guys and I'm thinking,
what am I missing right now?
Yeah, should I just break away and check Twitter real quick to see what might be happening? So it's nuts, but it's a good kind of nuts, because I think like Mike Brey had long said since this happened in January on January 19th, like it's time for a break for everybody. Like he needed it, the university needed it, hell, maybe the South Bend Tribune needed it, because it just got to the point where after 23 years, let's try something new and see how it works.
You brought up Shrewsbury from Penn State, and when I was talking to my dad about this a couple of days ago, the first question I asked is, "Do you think that is enough of an upward promotion in his job?" Because I understand that it's Penn State, they're in the Big Ten, Notre Dame, the ACC, but those are two conferences in basketball that see a lot of bids every year in the NCAA tournament, and just overall kind of solid basketball conferences. So yeah, my underlying question is, do you see that as enough of a upward move and not a lateral move for someone like Shrewsbury? And speaking of probably compensation too, is Notre Dame really going to up the compensation compared to where Penn State is giving him enough to kind of pull him away, if that's the direction that they were going to go in?
That'll be the $64,000 question. Is Michael Shrewsbury at Penn State has earned himself a raise? If Penn State is serious, see, now you have two schools now in Penn State and Notre Dame, both football schools for obvious reasons. One, first, second, third, it's football, spring football at both those campuses. How are they both going to commit to basketball and say, we're serious about basketball, and here's how serious we are with our financial commitment with Micah Shrewsbury? But more so with Micah, I think it's not necessarily a lateral move for him going from Penn State to Notre Dame, as it is maybe his background in who he's worked for, where he's worked, the success that he's had with guys like Brad Stevens and Matt Painter, and the fact that he's an Indiana native that would make this job really attractive. And I think all things considered, we start back on January 19th, or even before that, when Mike Bray tells Jack Swarbrick, I think this is going to be it. Jack Swarbrick's never been a guy, at least he has said it publicly, that has kept a working list in his right-hand drawer in his office. But I think when Mike Bray and Jack Swarbrick come to the conclusion that this is it, I think the first name that pops up for Jack Swarbrick was Micah Shrewsbury.
Stymie, one of our top basketball fans, is asking, how soon do you think Bray is coaching again? Maybe before you answer that, though, he said when he announced his retirement that he was going to be a part of this process, this coaching search process. Do you have a feel for how involved he has been in this search process?
I don't, and I think that's just lip service from the university and from Mike, just to kind of keep that.
Sounded good at the time.
Yeah, it sounds good at the time, but it's also kind of weird. Like it's just a weird position to put not only Mike Bray in, but to put Notre Dame in, as to, well, we know we'd like to talk with these candidates, and maybe Mike Bray can talk with them as well. I think here's how Mike Bray would be involved in the coaching search or the coaching process. Once Jack Swarbrick decides this is my guy, and we've got a contract signed, and we've done the dance with the press conference, and we've all smiled for the pictures and said, what a great day for Notre Dame athletics and blah, blah, blah. That's when coach A, B, or C steps aside, goes and sits down with Mike Bray, and Mike Bray says, all right, let me tell you what this job really entails.
Right. Here's what I think
that would be the greatest resource Mike Bray can be for the University of Notre Dame, instead of being like, maybe this guy, maybe that guy. I don't know about this guy. What about those guys? So I think that would be Mike Bray's biggest job moving forward for Notre Dame, just to be a sounding board for the new guy to say, let me tell you how things really work over there.
I have another question that's I've been kind of pondering, hearing some of the portal news. Are you more concerned next season for the spot or the condition or status of where that roster is going to sit, or who they bring in potentially to be the head coach? I guess, what are you more concerned about? Who's head coach, or where the roster is going to be at next season?
I'd say the head coach, because the roster is going to take care of itself, because it's going to get to the point now they have 5 players back. I think they have 4 returning players in Van Allen Lubin, Tony Sanders, Matt Zona, and J.R. Knesny. Everybody says Cormac Ryan can return for a 6th year, and he can, but I have a hard time seeing Cormac Ryan coming back. So it's 4 returning guys and incoming freshman Marcus Burton. For now, I get the indication that none of the other guys, the returning guys, are going to hit the portal. JJ Starling, obviously, he's gone to Syracuse. Dom Campbell, he's in the portal. He may come back depending on who the next head coach is. So it's a situation with the portal where you have no choice but to do something differently if you're the Notre Dame athletic administration, and says, which is long said, we're going to we can access the portal, but you're only going to access it for graduate transfers. That's the only way Notre Dame has used it with Paul Atkinson from Yale 2 years ago and then last year with Marcus Hammond. That can't be an option if you want to have more than 8 guys on your roster. Like you have to give this new coach some leeway in the portal and say, we've got 8 scholarships available. See if you can find 2 graduate transfers. See if you can find 3 traditional transfers just for this season. And then we can build back the roster. Maybe also you can find 2 late rising high school seniors that nobody knows about that want to play for Notre Dame this coming season. So we can build the roster back up that way. And then in coming seasons, go back to the traditional graduate transfer. But if you're Jack Swarbrick and you're the Notre Dame administration, and if you give any credence to being a serious basketball school, you have to loosen the reins a little bit on the portal restrictions for the new coach, at least for the first year.
Well, and obviously being as close to the women's program, I mean, they've had a couple of undergrad transfers over the last few years. Is it simply a matter of, like case by case? Do you think, like these, like their academics lined, like they could get in because their academics were in line, and it's just maybe a little bit harder from the men's side, to find those kind of guys?
Absolutely, because from a men's standpoint, Sean, it doesn't matter if you're going to Notre Dame or you're going to Georgia Tech or Stanford, or pick whatever school out of the 353 schools that are in Division I. You believe in your heart of hearts that the reason you're going to college is because you're going to the league. You're going to be an NBA player. Exactly. You're not going to college to take calculus or theology.
Well, especially in basketball too, where you can enter yourself into the draft at a much younger age and class. You don't have to worry about finishing school.
Absolutely. So it's a case by case basis, and Notre Dame would take a freshman transfer or a sophomore transfer or a junior transfer or even a senior transfer only if their academic transcripts mirror what they were doing at Notre Dame. And there aren't that many players from the men's side that are going to mirror what a freshman at Notre Dame has to do academically. It's just not.
Right.
Oh, another burning question I had. I think this ends my questions. But Tom, what is the number one thing that you want to see in a difference from head coach next season from Mike Brey? Just like one thing that, consistently bugged you, or again, the number one thing, difference that you want to see in the new head coach compared to Mike Brey.
There's not enough time to go through it all, because when this thing went south, and it went south early, when this went south, it really went south with everything, as far as player development, as far as care factor, as far as just everything. Like, it was not, you never looked at this Notre Dame team and said they're going to win this game, or they're going to run this action to get this shot to win this game. Like, it was late game situations, it was in-game adjustments, it was defensively, it was rotation, it was everything. That's
stuff
why
that he's always been pretty good at,
right. And he had been. That's why when I wrote my column for tomorrow's South Bend Tribune, and it's online at ND Insider, that's why I said it's a total it's a total redo and a total teardown of everything. And that's okay. Like, it's not a new coach coming in and you're going to have a ready-made roster that can make a run at the NCAA tournament if they only do this. Like, they have to start over with everything, from culture, from players, from development, from assistants to just, I mean, it's across the board. You're just going to have to start over and say, moving forward, Notre Dame men's basketball was a really good program under Mike Brey for 23 years, but starting in 23-24, this is a new era from top to bottom from Notre Dame basketball.
Vince and I touched on this real quickly yesterday. How much do you think, because you've come on and you've defended the resume that Mike Brey has, and I agree. I mean, he's the all-time winningest coaching Notre Dame history. He's got the Elite Eights, all the NCAA berths and all that stuff in this era. I mean, there's a lot to, obviously, to respect, but these last 6 years, obviously, and especially, this year just leaves such a huge, just horrible taste in people's mouth. How much do you think this ultimately, the way this has all ended, how much do you think it tarnishes his legacy ultimately?
I don't think it does, because it's something where after 23 years, unless you know how difficult a job that is, to do what Mike Brey did in the Big East, are you kidding me? To play on a Big East semifinal Friday night 4 consecutive years and 5 of the last 7 after Notre Dame had never even won as much of as consecutive Big East Conference tournament games before he got here, and then to go to the ACC and basically reinvent. Like it was always with Mike Brey, you're reinventing. You're in the Big East, but you're playing in divisions. Then we're going to go to one division. Then we're going to lose teams. Then we're going to bring teams in. Then we're going to become this mega league. And then all of a sudden, once Notre Dame does that, oh, now you're going to go to the ACC and start over. And 2 years later, you're beating Carolina and Duke back-to-back nights to win an ACC tournament championship. So, yeah, there was a lot of bad this year. And Mike Brey's the first one to say, I take 900% responsibility in how this thing got so screwed up this year and went so sideways and so south. But you can't that can't take away 3-17 in the league and 11-21 overall this year. Just can't take away the back-to-back Elite Eights, the first Sweet 16 in 16 years in 2003, all the players that came through, winning a Maui Invitational Tournament Championship, all the other stuff that went with it. You can't ignore that, because I will go to until I cover my last Notre Dame men's basketball game, which hopefully isn't another 25 years after I've done it for 25 years now. But I'll go to my last Notre Dame men's basketball game insisting there were not 2, maybe 3 coaches, whoever they are in the country, that could have won and could have done what Mike Brey did over 23 years at Notre Dame, with all the restrictions and all the other outside stuff going on, the dump of an arena, no practice facility, not having any place to practice in the summertime because America Youth on Parade came through every summer. And Mike Brey just won games in 2 different leagues and was pretty good about the whole thing in revitalizing what Notre Dame men's basketball was when he walked in the door in 2000.
Yeah. A couple names I wanted to throw at you real quick that we didn't get to. I mentioned Chris Holtmann earlier from Ohio State, and I think it was Dick Weiss. I don't even know who he works for anymore. He's one of these guys who's been around for a long time, but he's tweeting last night, hey, here comes Holtmann to Notre Dame. Thoughts on that? And then we had somebody ask about Ed Cooley from Providence as well. So I'll let you answer those however you want.
I'll start with Ed Cooley first. If Ed Cooley's leaving Providence, and he's a Providence guy, he went to Providence, he's taken that program to unbelievable heights in the Big East. If he's leaving Providence for anywhere, it'll be for Georgetown. I wouldn't be surprised if he was going to take the Georgetown job. So I just don't think Ed Cooley's a fit out in northern Indiana after being a city guy in Providence, and then would do so in DC. And Chris Holtmann, how do you say, if you're Jack Swarbrick and you run Chris Holtmann up into that press conference, wherever it is, and again, another drawback or head scratcher for Notre Dame, when Notre Dame men's basketball needs to have a press conference, where do they have it? In the football stadium.
Yeah, I know.
In the football interview room. So it's like, if you're Jack Swarbrick and you're running Chris Holtmann up at that podium and saying, this is our guy, how do you sell a guy who went 3-15 in the Big Ten this year, and then also a guy who has perennially done less with more, and then has to go to a program that you have to do more with less. Like Chris Holtmann at Ohio State. Chris is a great guy, and he may very well be a really good coach, but he's got every resource imaginable coaching in the Big Ten and coaching at a place where he's coaching at now, and you still can't do better than 3-15 in the league. That's a hard sell. And if Notre Dame hadn't gone to hadn't gone to the NCAA tournament in the last 10 years, hadn't had a winning record in the last 5 or whatever, went 0-20 in the ACC. I think that would be an easier sell, but that's I just can't picture Chris Holtmann making the move from Ohio State to Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's completely fair, and it all makes sense when you think about it that way. Appreciate you, Tom. Always good stuff. Good catching up with you. I'll see you.
You got it, fellas. Hopefully, now the last time I was on your program, it wasn't with you, but it was with Vince.
Okay.
The last time I was on your program, the next day was when I found out about Mike Bray walking away. So hopefully tomorrow, maybe they pull some surprise rabbit out of their hat and they have a head coach and they make an announcement. We can only hope. Right?
We can only hope.
We can only hope.
You'd sleep a little bit better.
But like you said, like if these guys are still coaching in the tournament, we're not going to know until they're done in the tournament.
At the very least, I'd say right now, Monday at the earliest, we'll know something, and maybe we'll know a lot by Monday. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, Tom.
You got it, fellas. Take care. We'll see you.
You too. All right. Yeah. Tom Noie from the South Bend Tribune, bringing all the basketball heat that you can handle.
Answered a lot of questions. Having Tom
Jackie Moon is available. I like that one.
Having him is like a wealth of information on the men's basketball side. If you want to know,
absolutely,
if you want to be the front runner of what's going on in the coaching search, I feel like that's the perfect guy to talk to it with, because like he said, this is what he's thinking about 25 hours a day. He's always refreshing, rechecking, making sure he's up to date and constantly kind of looking into these names that are brought up.
He's been the columnist for the Tribune for the last few years, but he still is on the Notre Dame men's basketball beat, which he has been on for more than 2 decades now. So a wealth of information. He's seen highs and lows and everything in between over there on that Notre Dame basketball beat. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I think this is the perfect transition into some rapid fire.
I think you're absolutely right. Let's start with this tonight. Isaiah Foskey had some interesting comments about NIL recently. He told the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, "I feel like I wouldn't have gone to Notre Dame if there was NIL when I was coming into college," end quote. He also talked about a recent Notre Dame signee who turned down bigger NIL money from another school, saying, quote, "The price difference was so big, I wouldn't know what to do. There's so much pressure on the player and his family. You can make NIL money when you're at Notre Dame. You just have to work for it," end quote. So what do you think about these Isaiah Foskey comments?
To be honest with you, I think these comments are pretty out of pocket, to be honest. I don't think, there's no reason for someone like Foskey to make these comments and to specifically say, I don't think I would have gone to Notre Dame had the NIL landscape been the same, back when I was making my decision. I just think it's not a good look for Notre Dame. And as someone who's an alumni, who's going into the draft, as someone who's going to be drafted, I just don't understand why you would, you're basically kind of throwing Notre Dame under the bus a little bit and saying that there's better options out there. And, again, I understand that that's the honest answer. And it's, what we've talked about before is Notre Dame's not going to compare when it comes to a lot of these other NIL schools. But again, this guy went here for a long time. He was committed to the program, dedicated. I just think that there's no reason to make these comments, whether they're true or not. I just don't think that there's something to be said. I just don't think that they should be said because, Notre Dame's still fighting for recruits. There's still people out there. These things get heard. It could be something that could potentially sway, someone from committing to Notre Dame. So I really don't like the comments. I don't think that they're necessary. And for what I just talked about, it's just really unnecessary.
I thought the most interesting comment was there at the end. You can make money when you're at Notre Dame. You just have to work for it. And, as we've talked about, with different recruits and, just the way things work with NIL, pay for play or whatever you want to call it, that's kind of been, where Notre Dame has been in this whole thing. We're not just going to give you boatloads of money. You're actually going to have to do something to get that money. Like you can get NIL money, but it's not just going to be handed to you in a big fat sack. And, again, he's being honest and like like the whole fun thing, like the Brady Quinn thing. And it's like it's great in concept, but how does it hold up across the rest of college football? It is interesting that Isaiah fought. Like, it's one thing to be honest, but it's one thing, it's another thing, I guess, to be brutally honest like this. And but
Right.
for your program's all-time sacks leader to come out and say, basically, I don't know if I would have gone there if they would have had NIL, 5-6 years ago when I was coming out of high school. It definitely makes you take a step back and look at it and kind of think about it a little bit
That's
more.
right. It just, is there still some like underlying bitterness that he has towards the program, something that he didn't fulfill in his time at Notre Dame overall? Again, I don't know what it is, but to me, there's just no reason to bring up these kind of comments, considering that's the school you went to and the challenges that Notre Dame faces already in the NIL landscape. And then for someone who was super successful like him to make even more comments to kind of, already say what's already known is just a little bit out of pocket for me.
Yep. So the Chicago Bears, of course, were the big winner when they traded the number 1 pick in the NFL draft to Carolina last week. But the Indianapolis Colts were one of the biggest losers in that trade because they've got the number 4 pick and they desperately need a quarterback. So if you're the Colts, here are some potential options that you have. You can stay put at number 4, hope no one trades up past you, and get what you get at number 4. You can try to trade up to number 3 with the Cardinals because the Texans have the number 2 pick. They probably need a quarterback as well. So you're probably going to end up with either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson there at number 3. And, one of those two at number 4 is probably going to be what's left over for you if you stay at number 4. You can go try to be bold, try to trade up with Carolina now for the number 1 pick. What are you willing to give up to do that? You can potentially sign Lamar Jackson. I think there's like another day that they can do that. Or you can just tank this year and see if you can draft USC's Caleb Williams next year. So, Jesse, of those options, which one are you going with if you're the Indianapolis Colts? Are there any good options?
I really don't think that there are any good options because, the Bears did what they did. And I'll make my first comment. The Bears swindled the Panthers. Everyone said that the Panthers made a great move and that it's worth the draft picks if you can get a great quarterback. I'm not sold on it because, in my opinion, round 1 quarterbacks are a 50-50 chance. Half the time they pan out, half the time they don't. I wouldn't necessarily give up first-round picks and second-round picks in order to potentially hit on a quarterback. But that's besides the point. And I don't think that the Colts should do the same to try to go after a quarterback. I don't think that they should give up, put together this package of, potential deals that could, get them up a spot or two. And really, there's not a lot of outside of Stroud. And crap, I can't think of the other guy who I've been thinking of a lot.
Bryce Young?
No.
Anthony Richardson?
Yeah. And so, to me, the quarterback draft isn't rich heavy. Outside of the guys that are going to go maybe in those first couple picks, I just don't see a benefit of giving up a lot, and especially just to move up a spot or two. I would, if I'm the Colts, I just kind of let history repeat itself since drafting Andrew Luck and, Andrew Luck retirement, of just trying to find another quarterback this year that could be serviceable, maybe on a 1 to 2 year contract and hold out for next season. I just don't think of where they're at now, and considering that, there's really only 2 good quarterbacks, in my opinion, that there's enough value to trade up. So
yeah,
I'm on the thinking or the ideology that they should really just kind of sit this one out again and hope to maybe, land someone bigger next year. I don't believe in tanking overall, but, I just don't know what's a better option for them at this point.
The problem with tanking is you're talking about tanking an entire season with your eye on that number 1 pick, and you could very easily end up tied with somebody and lose out on the pick. It's like that's tanking, and it's just too much. I don't think that is a sound strategy. But the problem with the Colts is their roster gets a little bit more expensive and a little bit older every year. Probably 3 years ago was, where their roster was as close to optimized as you were going to find, and they squandered that. They haven't been able to get the quarterback situation right. And like, you were bad enough this year that you're sitting there with the number 4 pick and you still are, because of the I agree with what you're saying. I don't like the depth in this quarterback draft. Like, there's nobody I would want to move up for. So I would take my chances at number 4. And the problem is, like, at number 4, you're probably not going to, you'll get a quarterback if that's what you decide to do, but I don't think he's going to be a franchise guy. I think Vince and I talked last week. I would not try to sign Lamar Jackson. And it's not that I don't like Lamar Jackson. It's that
It's too expensive.
well, he's too expensive, and you've got to rearrange, you've got to reconstruct your whole offense around Lamar Jackson. So, like, if you're the Colts, is that the offense that you want to be running? And it's just so different than everything else. So I think I would stay put at number 4 and see what I get. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be that great, and the Colts are really
I think
just
that they're gonna get. I think the Colts should focus on one of those like non-sexy picks. Go after it off a top offensive lineman. Maybe go after one of the top defensive linemen. Unfortunately, those aren't the fun positions. You got to hit on when you go with like a quarterback in the top 10 picks. And so to me, I just think you kind of bulk it up, grab a solid kind of offensive lineman potentially, and kind of see what next year brings. But there, people in the chat have talked about, there's going to be Caleb Williams, and then eventually there's going to be Drake May, and then you're going to have Hooker out of Tennessee at some point. Like I think there's more quarterback rich drafts to come, and it just doesn't make sense to draft up and give up a lot when really there's only 2 valuable quarterbacks this year in this draft.
They're just in a bad spot in the draft, and like, they weren't willing to move. Like, if there was really one of these guys they wanted, they should have been willing to give up some more draft capital, like Carolina did. For Carolina to move up from number 9 to number 1, whereas you've got the I keep getting texts during the show, whereas you're sitting there in the number 4 spot and you couldn't make that pick. So, hey, what are you going to do? So March Madness is here. Jess, play-in games start tonight. Men's tournament, full swing, starting Thursday. The women start Friday. Which week is better, conference tournament week or this week, the first week of the NCAA tournament?
Oh, it's 100%. Conference tournaments are fun, but the bulk of the season was done in the regular season. I put more weight in the regular season conference champions compared to the conference tournament champions. I don't know about you, but it's not. Conference tournaments, one bad night can throw you off. You're not going to have you have a better body of work during the regular season. So to me, this is no question, no doubt, the first couple rounds, this first weekend of the NCAA tournament. You see all the upsets that no one was prepared for, and you just see a lot of close, good games. This is where it really matters. And like I said, only one game is what you need in this tournament now. Get hot in one game. Maybe end up like Virginia a couple of years and being a 1 seed, losing to a 16. But I like the excitement. I like the unknown. And of course, I like the brackets. I like competing with people. I like seeing, how I stack up against everyone else. Because usually, and I'm not trying to jinx myself, but every year I can usually get one region like pretty perfect in the first couple rounds. I don't know what it is, but one region I'm usually pretty solid on.
Yeah. I mean, it's without a doubt the first week of the NCAA tournament. And because the best part about conference tournament week is like, if you get a couple Cinderellas who are potentially going to be a bid stealer, or just Cinderellas, guys who weren't going to get teams that weren't going to get into the tournament, and who end up there at the end. That's the most fun part, and that's, to me, the most fun part about this first week of the tournament as well. The Cinderellas come out, the double-digit seeds start winning. The St. Peter's this year, like the Oral Roberts from a couple of years ago. Those kind of teams, there's always going to be a handful of them, and that's what's the most fun about this week. That and the fact that like your games start at noon on Thursday, and it's just wall-to-wall basketball.
Yeah, this week I'm checked out at noon Thursday and Friday at work, and I kind of got the bosses okay. I'm running the office bracket challenge this year, so I sent out all the brackets. I'm going to be keeping people's scores in a spreadsheet. So, hey, I'm just doing my job by watching the games and keeping in the excitement. I'm going to turn the TV on in the office and hopefully get enough people to watch.
Right. So there's almost always, of course, a 5-12 upset with very few exceptions. So what is your 5-12 pick for the first round this year?
Yeah, so I'm going to go through the 5-12s. There's obviously 4 of them. San Diego State and Charleston in the South region. You have Duke and Oral Roberts in the East region. Coming out of the West, you have St. Mary's and VCU. And then in the Midwest, you have Miami of Florida and Drake. So I'm going to eliminate 2 off the bat. I think Miami takes care of Drake pretty easily. And I think Duke takes care of Oral Roberts pretty easily. So to me, this comes down to San Diego State and Charleston, St. Mary's and VCU. And I actually like both 12s in this. I like VCU and I like Charleston over San Diego State. But if you had to give me one, I really like that Charleston matchup with San Diego State.
That's the one I'm leaning toward as well. And Charleston, they like to shoot some 3-pointers. They are second in the nation, more than 30 3-point attempts per game that Charleston puts up. San Diego State guards the 3-point line pretty well, but Charleston can put it up out there. The other one that I was looking like, I'm tempted on that Duke game just because I want Duke to lose, and it's like, is Duke?
I think
really
they're going to go pretty
good?
far.
They're riding hot, like Oral Roberts 2 years ago with Max Asmus, who is still around. Like, I can't believe that guy never entered the transfer portal and went and played for a bigger school. But Asmus, like he likes to put him up as well. I do think Duke is probably going to win. The St. Mary's Virginia Commonwealth game, I think that's pretty evenly matched. They're both pretty good defensive teams. I would probably take the under on that game. But I agree with you. The Charleston one is the one I'm leaning toward the most as far as my 12-5 first round upset over San Diego State.
We didn't coordinate this, by the way.
We did.
Everyone.
We did. We both came to that. That's right. Yeah, and Dekoff 18 saying here in the Charleston coach could be a fit, and that Pat Kelsey, I believe, is his name, and that doesn't. I didn't ask Tom Noie specifically about him when we had him on because just reading his article, he was one of the guys that Tom has pretty much eliminated from this process. Don't ask me why, but Charleston has had a great season, and Kelsey was pretty good at Winthrop. Took them to the tournament a couple of times as well when he was at Winthrop, but it doesn't look like that it's lining up. I mean, it's really, again, the names that we talked about, the guy at Drake, the guy at Colgate seemed to be, and like Langle, the guy at Colgate, not to get sidetracked on Notre Dame men's basketball, but they've been to the tournament. I think it's like they've won the Patriot League and been to the NCAA tournament, the last 4 times they've had the opportunity, excluding the COVID year. They've won the Patriot League every other year and got automatic bids. So I don't know. We'll see who it ends up being, though. They're in the tournament right now. So these are the NCAA tournament broadcast teams for CBS. These are the announcers that are going to be paired up calling games this week. You've got Jim Nantz, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill as your A team. Then you've got Brian Anderson and Jim Jackson, Ian Eagle and Jim Spinarkle, Kevin Harlan, Dan Bonner, and Stan Van Gundy, Lisa Byington, Steve Smith, and Avery Johnson, Andrew Catalan and Steve Lapis, Spiro Ditas and Deb Antonelli, and then Brad Nessler and Brendan Haywood. My question, what is your favorite, which is your least favorite when you're watching the games of those announcer crews?
Man, so unfortunately, I wish my good friend Reggie Miller was somewhere a part of this crew because I love listening to some Reggie Miller. And
he decided he didn't want to do them. That's why they've got Stan Van this year.
And that leads me to my next point. Least favorite I'll start out with, and this is strictly because of one guy, and it's the Stan Van Gundy crew.
You're not a Stan Van fan, huh?
No, the Van Gundys have been a little bit whiny recently, in my opinion, and I'm not as much as a fan as I used to be. Like I like I said, it's not like I dislike Stan Van Gundy. I just think that he's become a little bit whiny. And a little bit hard to listen to, very critical and not just more of like enthusiasm and kind of, why the game is good and kind of stuff like this. He kind of gets caught up in like, this is blah, 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 blah. This is why this is bad. And it's just not as much enthusiasm. When we're talking about the college level, you need enthusiasm. And so that's going to be my least favorite. And call me old fashioned and call me, whatever, but I'm going to have to stick with Jim Nantz, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill as my favorite. There's a reason there's 3 stars in that lineup. And it's just, the combination of all 3 of them. You got old school, you got some kind of new school, and then you kind of have the mediator of the group. So that group's my favorite, and that's one I look forward to, the most when the big game is on.
Yeah, I'll miss Reggie with Harlan as well. So that really dings it down. This is going to be the last year Jim Nantz does college basketball and the Final Four. So Ian Eagle is going to be moving up, and he'll be with that Raftery Grant Hill crew starting next year. So that could be a lot of fun. I think if I don't obviously live in the New York area, I think Ian Eagle and Raft do like Brooklyn Nets games together or something like that. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Like New York area people. And I know a lot of people like that. I think that'll be a good one next year. I like that number 1 crew just because of Raft in there. He makes it a lot of fun. I like that. My least favorite is the Spiro Ditas Deb Antonelli pairing.
I for obvious reasons, I knew that one was coming.
I'm sorry. I've never been a Spiro fan. I've just never liked him.
And then you pair it.
Yeah, and then Deb Antonelli, you throw her in there, and I out at the ACC tournament, I got some of the up close and personal about Deb Antonelli whining about how she thinks she's unfairly, like things that she said and all this different stuff, and how and then her analysis of the game. Sometimes it's there. Sometimes you just need to shut up once in a while, and that's what it comes down to. And just close your mouth and let the play-by-play announcer talk as well. It is National Pie Day. What?
I'm sneaking in a question before we get into some pie
All right,
questions.
Go ahead. Throw it.
I got one question very quick. It is blank that 21-year-old pitcher, Nicaraguan pitcher, struck out Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, and Rafael Devers and immediately got signed by the Tigers after his showing.
Really? I had not even heard that. That is just fantastic. It's like when you look at the World Baseball Classic, there's so many cool things about the World Baseball Classic from, like the crowds, and it's just such a different atmosphere at these games than your typical major league game. And for a kid like that to come in and accomplish that kind of feat and get a big league contract out of it, that's pretty awesome.
He was dealing. I saw some of the videos. You got to go look up these strikeouts. He's got some nasty movement, and you could tell that these guys are just like, whoa, where is that coming from?
Where did that come from? That's
yeah.
Right.
But I saw that today, and I just thought that was great. A guy who's 21 years old going against 3 of the premier batters in the the MLB. He's just a guy making the most of his opportunity, his stage, whatever you want to call it. So it's really cool to see. I think that's like the underlying overarching things that you'd like to see come from the WBC. Some of these smaller guys out of some of these smaller countries get their opportunity. So really cool to see.
Like it's cool to see just places like, Great Britain, the Czech Republic, like places that it's like, oh, they have baseball over there?
Right.
You didn't know that. All right. So it is National Pie Day. Give me your 2 favorite pies.
All right. Last question.
It is actually PI, like the
mathematical symbol 3.1415265,359.
Okay.
To be
all right.
Exact. I'm gonna go with cherry pie and apple pie, 2 all-time classics. I like cherry pie because, as you know, my mom, your wife, makes some of the best cherry pie there is, and it's on beat. And then you can't top a hot piece of apple pie with some good vanilla ice cream on top, letting those kind of melt into each other a little bit. So yeah, I'm going with apple pie and cherry pie.
Cherry pie is the tops. It started with my grandma, my dad's mom. She was the first to make the cherry pie, and it's become a family tradition. You're right. My wife's cherry pie is primo. I'd say pumpkin pie after that.
I like a good pumpkin pie.
Like a good pumpkin pie, obviously around Thanksgiving. So I've never been a huge apple pie guy. I will eat apple pie if it's there, but cherry is the tops, and then pumpkin after that, I think. John Christophic got in late and he missed. Tommy Guns was giving him a hard time because I actually did pick Andrew Kristofic.
I was gonna say, you did
my
grab
team
him.
of breakout players. So that's right.
There was some false information. He was drafted.
That's right. That's right. They were just giving John a hard time. Well, John, you just got here, so unfortunately, we're going to have to go. You can go back to the start of the show and start watching over again. Sorry you got in late tonight, but thanks for being here as always. Great stuff tonight. Vince will be in tomorrow. We've got the mailbag show, and of course, we've got spring football starting up 1 week from tomorrow as well. So we've got a lot of spring football countdown type stuff going on. So, Jess, I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for Tom Noie for joining us tonight, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Goodbye, everyone.